Hello, folks of the internet, and welcome to another edition of the ONETA Football Show. And what a show we have for you today! After yet another historic performance by my boy Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, we're breaking down, recapping Super Bowl 58 that just happened this past Sunday. And on top of that, we're going to be going a little rapid fire preview of what the offseason is going to bring for every team, as I'm going to address one team need for every single team in the National Football League. But let's get to the real meat on the bone. That is Super Bowl 58. Let's go. Now, as I said, it was another historic performance by the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. And that is without question. And yet, once again, the Kansas City Chiefs have proven that they can win in a different manner. All season long, it has been about Kansas City's defense. And will the offense respond? Can the offense come through? Can the offense respond? Yada, 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 all the way through, as if the greatest player to ever play the position, yes, I said it because I meant it, as if he couldn't do that, as if he couldn't lead that team to victory. But they did truly win a defensive battle this past Sunday. As of recording, in case anyone hears it, I'm recording this Monday. I just like to keep to the schedule to make sure everyone knows what's coming through. But so if I ever say yesterday, that's because I'm recording this on Monday. But the Kansas City Chiefs showed an enormous amount of grit, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. So beyond even my flowers to Patrick Mahomes, which I will obviously give, I gotta gush about the Kansas City defense here because it's the real story. San Francisco's offense was humming in a lot of different ways. It was doing really, really well, but it was just stopped short. Opportunistic things. And I think that's where I'd like to begin. I'm going to point out three X factors, or not X factors, three keys to the game. And they're both positive and negatives on both teams. For the Chiefs, three things. One, motor defensive plays. When I evaluate players for the draft, when I say high motor player, it's the kind of player that just keeps working and working and working until they get the result that they need. It's a specific trait that you really want to see in an edge player or a defensive lineman, or in particular a rushing linebacker if you have a heavy blitzing linebacker package. You want high motor players. That was the Kansas City defense last night. Or Sunday, like I said. The way that they continually just attacked, but worked through and made Brock Purdy go through progressions, made Brock Purdy move in the pocket from time to time, that was the key to the Kansas City defense. Because if you move Purdy off of his first or second read, that's where he has trouble. He is a good processor of the football. I came probably a little too strong on the last podcast saying I'm not crazy about Brock Purdy. I'm still not. But I have to admit he played a really good game, and I have to say he is a good quarterback in the National Football League after that performance in the Super Bowl. However, that does not negate the fact of these weaknesses. When he has to process through those first two reads and start moving around, he certainly can do that. But it is not the level of the elites. He needs to buy time. He can do those things. But the Kansas City defense forced him to continually make either rush decisions, or when things did break down and he had to go to reads, he was forced to continually adjust as opposed to read the defense to make those long plays happen. And in particular, there were two players that stuck out to me with that, which was George Karlaftis and Leo Chanel, which I'll get to in a little bit. But high motor defensive plays was the key, number one, to a Kansas City victory. Two, opportunistic. The Kansas City Chiefs were opportunistic. They failed to, so let's set it up. They failed to take anything on the first drive after the McCaffrey fumble, popped by Leo Chanel. Wisconsin Badger. We love our home state. They failed to do that. But the second that muff punt happened, and I don't even like to call it a muff punt because that's not really fair, it hits the guy's ankle. McLeod can't do much about it. As soon as that happens, it's blood in the water because Kansas City is floundering on that first drive, and it's just, I'm going, I got it. Second drive was still not great, but they started moving the ball. They had the opportunity, kill shot right away to MVS in the end zone, and there it was, opportunity. And when they had an opportunity to then put points on the board, they did. And they did so in remarkable fashion from the standpoint it was classic drive down the field, but yet still have 10 to 20 yard plays with Patrick Mahomes and Yak receiving, which is really good. So opportunistic was number 2 key for me. And 3, it's going to sound crazy. It was faith, and I call it faith in Patrick Mahomes. For those who don't know much about this, I am not an overly religious person. It's not my cup of tea. If it is to you, that's great. However, I feel like I understand religion a little bit more, and this is a ridiculous statement, because I have so much faith in Patrick Mahomes to win a game. And the Kansas City Chiefs in general have the exact same thing. They just go, we have 15 on our team, we're going to win. They just believe it. It helps with the switch in their head where they just believe when the ball is in Patrick Mahomes' hands, they are going to succeed, they are going to score, they are going to win. It enables them to do great things. The faith in Mahomes, and he again delivers like the Hall of Fame player he already is, like the all-time great he already is. Faith in Mahomes was a key at the end because it gave those players the boost they needed to go, yo, who cares if we're down? We got this. And they did. Who cares if we failed for 2.5 quarters? We got this. And it's a faith in 15 in your leader to be able to do that. So that's my 3 keys for the Chiefs. 3 keys for the 49ers. 2 are positive, 1 was not. We'll stick to the positives right away. Great pressure applied all night. Steve Wilks called a hell of a defensive game plan. No one can take that away from him. He was just outgunned by the man. It was that simple. In regulation, they kept the Chiefs to 19 points. 19 points. That's usually a victory with the 49ers. If the 49ers keep you to 19 points, they win games. Wasn't the case. But the pressure applied, Mahomes was under duress all night. And every time he started to create outside of those last 2 quarters, including overtime, it was just attack, attack, attack. Force him to scramble, not allow him to get downfield, not allow him to do a lot of things. The pressure applied by the San Francisco defensive line was remarkable. They really deserve a lot of credit for what they did. Nick Bosa kept wearing down and getting games. Chase Young showed up for a good portion of this game. Eric Armstead was in there. Javon Hargrave was in there. Kinlaw even made a few plays. They did a really good job up front forcing Mahomes to get off those first reads for the majority of the game. They deserve a lot of credit for that. Again, keeping with the positive, Smash Mouth style. They came out like a ball on fire. They were ready to go. They talked a lot, and I thought they were just going to flame out, frankly, going into this game. Because they were talking almost like it was a come to Jesus meeting with Steve Wilks in that, not enough effort's being put in. I'm sorry. If you have to talk about your effort output going into a Super Bowl, I don't have faith in your defense. Or if it's on your offensive side of the ball, I don't have faith in you if your coaches have to say you're not putting enough effort in, and as a team you have to say, yeah, we're not putting enough effort in right now. That's absurd to me. I'll be the first to tell you, I can procrastinate, I can do a lot of things. I'm not a professional athlete, but I understand when it's a big moment, I got to do the thing. Whether the big moment's work-related, family-related, everybody understands that in some way, shape, or form, unless they just do not have that internal drive that they need. You're at the highest level of your profession, you have to talk about that. That's problematic. That did not show up here tonight. That was a big preamble to make it negative. It was a huge positive for them. They came out like a ball on fire, ready to hit people. Their offensive line went to attack, and Christian McCaffrey was gashing them for 6 or 7 yards because they were winning the line of scrimmage in a smash mouth style. Their defensive line came to play. They were ready to smash people. Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, for the limited time he got to play, were out to gun people down. That was what they were doing. Which we'll talk about Dre Greenlaw in a second too. But They were attacking. It was great to see that smash mouth style. And their defensive special teams in kick coverage, punt coverage, they were ready to destroy people. They were just monsters on the kick coverage games. It was insane. Their punt coverage teams did a phenomenal job because Smash Mouth style was there to play. They were out to prove a point, and they did that for the vast majority of the game. Huge positive on the 49ers part for that. They deserve a lot of credit for that as well. Here's the third key, and this is where we do have to get negative. It's not taking the moment. You're not seizing the opportunity. And that's where there's the difference in the game. Similar defensive prowess. Not the same ways, but huge pressure applied versus huge motor applied. Okay? You have faith in your quarterback and you understand you have the confidence to do it, where the other showed confidence just by smashing people in the face. Two counterpoints pretty well there. The third was one team was opportunistic, the other one was not. This game should not have been close if the 49ers could have took advantage of the game. The first half had no business ending 10-3. Zero. You cannot look at 10-3 as a success in that half when you have a red zone fumble from the Chiefs. You've stopped them to 3 and outs and limited drives the entire time outside of one possession. You did not seize your opportunities. The pick, the one actual bad play Mahomes had all game was the pick because he just overthrew Kelsey. Nothing. You didn't do anything with it. You need to take the advantage. You need to take the opportunity when you have it, and they could not do that. They were not opportunistic enough to seize the day and take that moment for themselves. That was the true keys of the game for me. Was one team was opportunistic, the other team was not. And people could say that's so simplistic. Sometimes football is that simplistic. It's the most complex game in the world, and sometimes it's the simplest game in the world. Who can just outwill themselves to win. But those are my 3 keys to it. And the X factors here I will get to. I'm going to start with the 49ers here. I'll start with the negative. X factor of the 49ers was health, but I do not think the health was too much of a game changer as shown by the actual game. Losing Dre Greenlaw hurt a lot in the weird fashion, but it did not show in the game. It wasn't as if all of a sudden Dre Greenlaw went out and Mahomes just went, I'm just going to throw little 8-yard dips to Kelsey where Dre Greenlaw would normally be and take advantage of it. That did not happen. Their linebackers just didn't give up as if, oh no, Dre Greenlaw's here. Dre Greenlaw's no longer able to play. Cool. Like, that just doesn't happen, right? Losing George Kittle on the last drive, that didn't help them either, but they had him for the vast majority of it. So it wasn't as if it was like, oh no, George Kittle can't play too. Deebo Samuel also getting that hamstring. He still gutted it out, and he was still effective after that. But I wanted to address the health because if that's ever an excuse that a 49er fan or an analyst is going to tell you as to why they lost the game is not accurate. The defense played far too well with the time that they didn't have Greenlaw, especially even in his spot, that you can say that was like the loss just for that game. Obviously, that'd be a huge loss for a season, but the way they played in that game, it wasn't a huge loss for the game. And you can't say George Kittle or Deebo Samuel was a huge problem because it really didn't turn out to be that much. By the time they lost Kittle, it was Patrick Mahomes saying, I'm just going to go prove that I deserve to be in this conversation as the greatest player who's ever played this game. They were in that mode. At that point, no one was going to stop that. Even if you had George Kittle, you weren't going to put that in. So I just wanted to address that before anyone goes crazy saying, oh, no, they weren't healthy. That's not fair at all. But the positive X factor, the guy I think should have been the MVP if 49ers won that game, was Juwan Jennings. And this is going to start out my also little crossover I have with the shout-out players. I think you always got to shout out a lot of players when they claim to play in a Super Bowl. My X factor for San Francisco and my number one shout-out player is Juwan Jennings. He showed up to play, and it was beyond the fact that, a trick play, he threw the trick play pass. That was great. Good for him. He had the touchdown receiving, and that was a gutted out at the end because although Purdy makes a good pass, he takes advantage of the route. That's great. The missed tackle and him just willing himself to continue up and move those extra 3-4 yards to make that score, that's a Jawan Jennings effort play. He also had 2 or 3 big catches when they needed possession. When they needed something to happen, they went to Jawan Jennings, and he came through. You're thinking it's going to be Ayuk, it's going to be Samuel, it's going to be Kittle. It was Jawan Jennings. He played a hell of a game. He played probably the game of his life, frankly, on Sunday, and it just didn't work out for him. But he had a phenomenal game. You got to give credit to Jawan Jennings. Another player I want to shout out because it's going to be Kansas City Chiefs pretty much after this. Chris Conley, former Chief. Every single special teams tackle was pretty much Chris Conley, and he was wrecking people. He did that one arm tackle. It looked like a JBL clothesline from the WWE. If he was any higher, he would have took off Richie James's head. But he did a textbook. No, I can't even say textbook. It was just, I'm going to rope you with one arm and destroy you, like J.J. Watt style. It was insane, that tackle. But he did it multiple times. He downed the one within the 5. He downed the punt within the 5. He had multiple deep down punt coverage tackles that were immediate or instantaneous. Richie James took 2 steps and it was done. Chris Conley had a phenomenal special teams game, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. Special teams is a huge part of the win for Super Bowl 58 and so many other Super Bowls. Special teams is never given enough credit. I want to give credit to Chris Conley. He did a great job. That was a great shout-out play on his part. And then we're going to go shout-out players plus a little X factor. My biggest X factor for the Chiefs was Steve Spagnuolo. When they needed plays, when they needed to step up, the calls came from Spagnuolo, and the players went and executed him, and it was great. Chris Jones is not a shout-out player because I wouldn't say I expect that from Chris Jones, but he was. We're going to talk about him a little bit more too later, but Chris Jones is an absolute stud and really led that defense. But the rest of the 3 other shout-out players I have of the 5 I want to mention. High motor George Karlaftis. He was that high motor player. Constantly making plays. The whole first half, Karlaftis was everywhere. And I couldn't tell if on the bounce or not off the blocked extra point if Karlaftis got a hand on it too on a secondary one because he didn't cause the initial pop-up block. But he was a part of a good penetration there too. So Karlaftis, huge motor player, and made some tackles for loss and sacks. Karlaftis deserves a lot of credit for the way he played on Sunday. Leo Chanel, former Badger from the homeland. He was everywhere. Forced that first fumble with McCaffrey. He was just making plays, making tackles, making really smart coverage as a linebacker. Deserves a lot of credit for that because it's hard to do against a super shifty, quick team like the 49ers. It's hard to play linebacker against those kind of players. Chanel did that. And then finally, Trent McDuffie. Trent McDuffie, my God, came up big with 3 or 4 passes defense, it seemed like. I know for a fact he had 2 huge ones against Debo, especially the downfield one. But then the crossing routes, as the game was starting to turn, McDuffie had that one too. And then the blitz at the end to save, to force the 49ers to go for their final field goal in regulation. My God, it was good. And a perfect play call by Steve Spagnuolo. So Trent McDuffie deserves a lot of credit for that one. And that's where I'm going to start. That's some general analysis I wanted to go into. With some shout-out players, some other stuff. And it kind of takes me to my turning point. The turning point of this game, not the most consequential, but the turning point of this game is the muffed punt. A lot of people are going to not realize that it bounces off the personal protector's heel, as McLeod is saying, Peter, trying to get him out of the way. And McLeod just has to make a play on a bouncing ball that's really hard to field in that moment. And it just doesn't work out. That's not McLeod's fault. I know it is his job to secure that ball, but he's just stuck in a horrible situation and has to make the best of it, and it doesn't work out. And it's a Chief recovery, and it's the turning point of the game where the Chiefs just go, blood in the water. Boom, we're done here. So you got to give that the turning point of the game. No muff punt there, because I don't even want to call it a muff punt. It was just he was making the best of a fumble recovery, really. Um, Without that, the game is not what it is. However, the most consequential play is what I talked about before. It's the McDuffie blitz. There's 2 minutes left in the game. Purdy's going back. It looks like he does have his receiver if that blitz does not come through perfectly. And McDuffie gets the hands up, played it perfectly, hit him in the body too, and there was no force to come down, so there was never going to be some bogus roughing the passer call or anything like that. It was a perfect blitz call by Steve Spagnuolo, but McDuffie still got to execute it, went straight through that gap, took it down. I think it was through the C gap, if I believe. Um, Thing of beauty. No, wait. B gap. Yeah, B gap, I think. I think it's between guard and tackle. It was a thing of beauty. Straight on through. No one was going to stop him. And that happened a lot for Chris Jones, too, which kind of works its way into it. The blitz calls, unblocked defenders. San Francisco didn't have answers for some of Steve Spagnuolo's calls. And you can see how it's all intermingled. How it, like, those were the X factors. That was what made the stew what it was. But that was the most consequential. Okay. Now, with all that being said, let's talk the best in the world. And that's Patrick Mahomes. Um, on the quarterback note, however, Brock Purdy, like I said, played well. Um, Still, I didn't see anything to tell me that he is great, but he played really well. And I have to give him credit for that. I can't criticize him and not give him any credit either when he played well. So good on Brock Purdy. 23 of 38, 255, and 1 touchdown. I should get that housekeeping in before we go. But now let's talk about the guy that went 34 46, 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, did throw the INT, but he also had 9 rushes, 66 yards with a 22-yard long, which was the third to last play of the game. And won an MVP, rightfully so, because he kind of just willed that team to victory in the end. It was amazing to me as someone who is, Green Bay, as I've said already, is my favorite team. I am a proud Wisconsin Green Bay Packer fan. Very close second to me is the Chiefs, because watching Patrick Mahomes is just like watching a non-problematic Brett Favre, both as a person and as a player. Pat is the utmost joy to watch it at the quarterback position that I've ever seen, because he has enough exciting risk-taker elements, but knows how to play the game, and there's just an inherent trust to watch him. Like I said, there's just an inherent faith on my end to watch Patrick Mahomes. I was getting a little tight in that fourth quarter watching him, because I was like, oh, I don't know, it's close. And they tied. I just watched him drive down the field, and I just went, we're good. And I was sitting with two friends, and it was like Butker hits that field goal to tie the game, and it was just this eerie calm went over me as a fan, and you could see it on Mahomes' face as a player. Like, he was not fazed by the moment at all. It was just laser focused, Michael Jordan esque. Just he's the Michael Jordan of football, more so than any other player. He can just take a game over with his ability to both pass and run. The laser focus was insane on his part, and I have to give him a ton of credit for that. But that's not even where it was. His play all game, outside that one interception, was very good. He was making smart decisions. There were only 2 passes that were even remotely close to behind a player, and they were both dropped. One was off the fingertips of Rice. It should have been caught because it hit him in the hands, but it's a hard play to make. You can say Mahomes can make a slightly better throw, but it's a hard one to make to the outside at such a sharp angle. But I'll still give Mahomes that one as a divot. 2 was it was slightly behind downfield to Justin Watson, I believe, on their first field goal drive. But it was not behind enough for me to go, oh my God, Pat, what were you doing? It was like, it was here instead of here. You know what I'm saying? It was closer to a side, but it's still like, you got to make that catch. But he played so well. And the best play of the game didn't even matter because they fumbled the play afterwards. 13:02 left in the second quarter. Mahomes to Hardman, 54 air yards across the field into bracket double coverage for a 53-yard gain. No player on the planet can make that throw except Patrick Mahomes. I even say Josh Allen can't make that throw. And it's only because there's a part of me that thinks Josh Allen may never get the moment to get that throw. Because I know he does have the physical ability. That's not me saying, like, oh my God, he could never attempt the throw and make it work. But there are two guys on this planet that can make that throw physically. There's one that can actually make it happen in the moment, and it's Patrick Mahomes. He is, and that should tell you everything in the first quarter where he can still show you, no, I'm a downfield passer better than anyone has ever been. Yeah, I'm Patrick Mahomes. Oh, but do you need me to just control the game with an eerie calm and sixth sense like nobody else? Yeah, I got that too. So, I mean, beyond that, you can't ever take it away from it. Those last two drives were magnificent. The last drive in overtime, though, specifically, calling his own number twice with the keep with the design run, which was great. And he also had Kelsey for the first down if he needed it, but he just went, nope, I'm taking it. Making up for the MVS spin to reestablish and losing 4 yards and going to 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 14. Didn't matter. Patrick's got it. Like, and then all three people in my household, including myself, that were watching that game, all were on the edge of our seat, like, oh my God, when he took off and run. I was like, is he going to do this right now? Is he truly just going to go, I got it? And he came pretty damn close to the 11 to get it. And it was just fun to watch. It's just fun to watch him just take that game over. It was one of those fine moments when you watch the excellence of sports. When you watch somebody that you know has the ability, has the drive, has the will, and has the cool to just take over a game and prove to somebody, well, not prove to somebody, prove to everybody, I am one of the best to have ever done this, and I'm going to show you right now in this big moment. It was insane because it just went. As soon as 49ers scored 3, beyond the fact that I was already super calm, I just went, this game's over. Because Patrick Mahomes is going to go win this game right now. And he did. So kudos to the Kansas City Chiefs. Kudos. However, big props to the 49ers. They played a hell of a game. To lose on the last play of overtime in the Super Bowl is gut-wrenching. And it absolutely sucks. But you have to give them credit for the way they played. And I know it sounds like it's kind of like a backhanded compliment. It's really not meant to be. They deserve a lot of credit for the way they played. But this comes down to the Chiefs just being the dynasty. They're the dynasty of the 2020s. They're the dynasty of the modern NFL. And have fun trying to beat them because you can't beat Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl outside of a game that everybody except Patrick Mahomes on the Chiefs decided not to play. So, yeah, I mean, he is so magnificent and so good. And we are all blessed. A lot of people used to say we're blessed to be in the time of Brady. I didn't feel blessed because I didn't think he was nearly as impressive as everyone was telling me he was. We are truly blessed to be in the time of Patrick Mahomes as football fans because no one has ever played the position better. With the total combination of physical ability and mental ability to control the game and the will to win that rivals the greatest of any sport, let alone the sport of football, we are truly in the golden era of Patrick Mahomes, and we're all blessed to see it as sports fans. So we better appreciate it while we can. But that is my official Super Bowl recap, and I do want to mention I was 1 point off on each team. My final score was 24-21, and it was 25-22. I was just so close. I knew how that game was going to go. I told you if Kansas City could score 20 points, they're going to win this game, and they did. So that is my official recap, and I'm very happy to do that. So we're going to transition quick to a little bit of off-season previews going in. But before we do, I want to give you this little special bonus here. We have Etsy shop sale right here, right now, and it lasts till March 13th. You can find all kinds of super cool stuff. You can see in the top left corner the Pokemon Bliss logo that I've created for my Pokemon project. You can get awesome Pokemon merchandise, but you can get also football merchandise, or just awesome cool stickers of states, or national parks, or all kind of fun stuff over at my Etsy shop. All you got to do is go to ptcreative.etsy.com and use the promo code BLISS. BLISS at checkout on any order of 2 items or less. or two items less. Sorry, 2 items or more, and you are going to get 20% off your total order. It is the first sale I have ever truly had on my Etsy shop. I'm excited to get to see how that one works for everybody. But I really want to reward people for helping me out, so I want to reward you guys with a little bit of money back on an order of 2 items or more. So just use that promo code BLISS at the PT Creative Etsy shop, ptcreative.etsy.com. Use the promo code BLISS on sale till 3/13/24, and you're going to get 20% off any order of 2 items or more. But with the business in hand, let's get back to the show. I'm going to transition and notes here. I did want to start previewing a little bit forward. This is not a heavy preview, not heavy notes, but this does apply some notes that I have had in the past, this past year that I've equated. And I'm going to go sort of rapid fire here on team needs moving forward. I think this is the number one position that needs to be addressed. You're going to see a lot of similarity by just basics. But we're going to go through here a little rapid fire. We'll start in the AFC. In the AFC, Baltimore Ravens. What do they need to address this offseason? I think they need to address their defensive line and their secondary. Specifically, I say that they're one of my few splits. It's odd to start with a split. I usually have just one here. I say split because of this. I believe Matabike is an impending free agent. He was a big impact player for them. They need to get that sorted out. If they can re-sign him and make sure that line kind of stays intact, then it should be focusing on secondary, because their linebacking core is clearly fine. The receiving core is coming together pretty well. They already have their number one receiver. They already have a number one tight end. I think they have good 2s and 3s, maybe additional there, but I think secondary is the focus there, with Marlon Humphrey having more injuries lately, the loss of Marcus Peters in the last 2 years. So I'm going to go secondary if they can sign Matabike. Cincinnati Bengals, it's obvious. It's offensive line. If you want to say that Joe Burrow is a top 3 player in this league, or a top 3 quarterback in this league, more prerogative to you, more power to you. Not necessarily something I agree with you, but from the standpoint that he's a great player, he is, but he needs an offensive line, and he cannot stay healthy if they can't block for him. This is offensive line right here. The Bengals need to address their offensive line hard. Cleveland Browns. I have 2. It's another split one. I think they've already addressed their quarterback position because financially they're stuck with what they have. However, if that's still going to continue to not work out, it might be time to invest in a quarterback that is not named Deshaun Watson. However, I think you got to go to receiver. Amari Cooper did great. David Njoku did great. There's not a great number 2 on that team, or 3, to complement the rest of the team. The running attack will be fine with Nick Chubb coming back and possibly Kareem Hunt coming back if they make that decision. So it's wide receiver and quarterback. And if Deshaun Watson cannot come back healthy, which has been kind of the story of the past 4 years, I guess, of his career. In Pittsburgh, it's really simple. Quarterback. Kenny Pickett sucks. I've said that since his draft analysis. I don't like Kenny Pickett as a quarterback. I have no problem with him as a person. This is simply on the field. Kenny Pickett is not a good quarterback. They need a quarterback. They have a defense. They have weapons. They need a quarterback until they get one. It's going to keep being Pittsburgh fans bitching and moaning up a storm that Mike Tomlin isn't a good coach, which is insane. Need a quarterback. Kenny Pickett's not the guy. We now move to the AFC South. Here is my issue with the South. A lot of candidates here for multiple things. A lot of candidates for, we got to rebuild a lot. Indianapolis, offensive line. You need to allow Anthony Richardson, who's already going to be a tank and already going to be a running threat, you need him to believe that he's going to get protected well so he can develop into the passer that he may be able to become with the arm strength and arm talent he has. If he doesn't have faith in that, he's going to have to become more of that tank runner again, and that just puts into question his health again. So offensive line has to be in the investment for Indianapolis, in my opinion. They do have defensive needs, but I think offensive line for your future is the most important thing. Houston. Houston is the big one here. Um, with me for Houston, I have one big thing for them. Offensively, I think they're fine. They can still add a little bit more, but I think they're fine. My big thing for Houston is this: you need to add another edge or another linebacking player to really create something um, of a vaunted defense. Secondary, you're getting there with Stingley and a couple other players, but you got to get more pressure. So that's why I'm going to say defense line. Jacksonville, same thing as Cincinnati. You don't block for Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence will never become the player that needs to be until he gets offensive line help. Jacksonville will continue to struggle. Trevor Lawrence will continue to not finish seasons, and Trevor Lawrence will forever be known as, hey, there's that guy that was supposed to be the Messiah. Never was. Good player already. I think Trevor can really be a good quarterback in this league. It's not me saying he can't be, but until he gets blocking, it ain't going to happen. So, offensive line is a big one in Jacksonville. Finally, Tennessee, it's just skills positions everywhere. You're not going to have Derrick Henry. Traylon Burks is at this point looks like a 3, not even a 1. I was high on him, and it's not paying off well for Tennessee right now. Do you think you have a future? I do think you have a quarterback that you can at least see if you got a real future in Will Levis. Offensive line they started to address, but in this past season they're going to continue to do that. It's got to be skills positions because if you can't score more than 10 points, you're done. The only reason they scored more than 10 points half the time is they just kept shoving Derrick Henry the ball and shoving. Oh God, is it Tajay Spears? Is he the one that is in? No, I don't know. It's that Spears, who's the secondary running back to Henry. He did really well too this year. You need skills position players on that team. Until you address those positions, Tennessee ain't going anywhere. AFC East, it's the same story in Buffalo. Got to help Josh Allen. I think offensive line would be a sneaky second one, although they have a decent offensive line. But it's wide receiver. You need a 2 and a 3 outside of Stephon Diggs, and you might need a 1. Who knows what's going to happen with Stephon Diggs every year. It's wide receiver, help Josh Allen out, or it's not going to happen. Miami, it's pass rush, whether it's from the linebacking position or the edge. I know they have Bradley Chubb, but you need to create enough pressure to make your secondary effective. Xavier Howard is a good corner. Jalen Ramsey is a great star position player. And yes, that star position only exists for Jalen Ramsey. Or corner, whatever you want to play Jalen Ramsey at, he's going to be good. But if you do not have the pass rush to at least make their play super effective, it's kind of a waste. You need pass rush in Miami to really get after those quarterbacks. You are in the conference with quarterbacks. Until you get it, you cannot be effective. Their offense is fine outside of Tua. I won't get into my Tua stuff again today, but he's not good. All right, finally, New England. You need everything. You need everything. But I had to narrow it down to one, so let's start with the most position. You need a quarterback. Yeah, it sucks Mac Jones never got true fair treatment, but also Mac Jones also couldn't even show enough to maybe say he deserves a shot. So, you need everything, but I think it's time to restart. Maybe trade Mac Jones away for a 5th or a 6th to a team like San Francisco, or another trade him away to a Cincinnati that could use a pocket passer, something like that, where he can go and learn and maybe get the chip off his shoulder. But you need a quarterback because you really need everything. You have a safety. That is about it. A few other players that, not to be disrespectful to everyone, they do have a few other players, but you don't have much on that team. You need everything. In New York Jets, it's the same thing. Offensive line. The fact that the Jets thought the offensive line they had this year was going to work is a pitiful idea. But their offensive line, we all bought into the hard knock stuff. I did too. I was rooting for Aaron to at least be successful with the Jets. I didn't think he was going to win a Super Bowl. I thought that was way too much. I didn't think they were going to win an AFC getting to the AFC Championship game either. But Aaron Rodgers isn't any good on the ground, just like every other quarterback. And if you can't protect him, it ain't going to matter. So you need offensive line help bad in East Rutherford. Finally, we're to the AFC West. Denver, you need a quarterback because Russell Wilson ain't it. You need a couple other things too, but you need a quarterback. And you also need cap relief, which won't happen for a couple years now. So take your medicine and do it now. Super Bowl champion, two-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, even though I do know have won 4 championships in their history. You need a wide receiver. They are one of my splits because of this. Defensive line, Chris Jones is not signed for next year. If you can do it, then you can focus on wide receivers impending coming to your team. If you can't figure it out, then defensive line needs to be your focus because you don't have an impact player outside of Chris Jones that can really affect anybody. So they're a split. They clearly need wide receiver help to get another explosive player to aid in Kelsey's aging and to aid Rashee Rice to become even better player than he already is. But if you can't keep Chris Jones, especially with L'Jarius Sneed needing a contract as well, then it's defensive line. Chargers. It's the same thing as Tennessee. It's insane to say. You need skill position players. And people are going to say, well, no, that's crazy. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler. All of them took a step back this year, except Gerald Everett. All of them took a step back. Keenan Allen was still somewhat effective. But they all took a huge step back. Eckler bet on himself, and it was not a good bet, unfortunately. I thought it was, but it didn't work out his way. Mike Williams cannot stay on the field. Keenan Allen, it's like every year you're like, how many times is this guy going to do it? Eventually the wheels are going to fall off this guy too, because it just happens for the Chargers. I hope that's not the case. I'm not hoping for anyone to get injured or anyone to just suck. But that's how it goes. You need skill position players at the running back, at the tight end, and the wide receiver position for the Chargers. That will get solved with Jim Harbaugh. I know that. And finally, Las Vegas, same deal. You need quarterback. How many times am I saying quarterback or offensive line? AFC, it's mostly offensive line. NFC, going to be a lot of what you're hearing in Las Vegas. You need a quarterback because then you can finally use the pieces you have in Las Vegas, such as, I don't know, Devontae Adams. You can finally use those pieces well. If you don't have a quarterback, it ain't going to work. NFC. We'll start in the NFC North, my favorite division. Chicago Bears. You need to figure out your quarterback. Plain and simple. If you think it's Justin Fields, I would disagree with you, but I could at least understand the hope. So it's quarterback, and if you think you've got it, then you can go offensive line. But it's quarterback position. Detroit Lions, defensive line. They actually do not create a great pass rush. They create a great pass rush in moments. Aiden Hutchinson gets a lot of hype. He is a good player. He's not a great player yet. He's a good player, not a great player yet. So you need to address the defensive line and getting either a penetrating force up the middle to allow your edge players to attack, or you need to get another dominant edge player on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson to complement him, to allow him to be as effective as he possibly could be. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think he could get a little bit better with some additional help. Green Bay, it's two ways I think about this. Conventional wisdom says secondary, because almost everybody in their secondary is up for contracts. Like all of their safeties are up for contracts. Jair Alexander was hurt, and then you were down to like just secondary corners all the time. However, I also say offensive line because you need to figure out the David Bakhtiari tackle situation, and I think you need one more really sturdy piece on that offensive line to truly be great all the time in the run game. They were great down the stretch. They weren't great all the time. You need to address David Bakhtiari being on this team and his health, but conventional wisdom says secondary, which is why they were split for me. I was really happy with both Corey Ballantyne and Corey Valentine, but I know that's a lot to ask for low round corners to just rookies just show up out of nowhere and be really effective. They do need to address that secondary. I would love a ball hawk in the back of that secondary. But those are the two things you need to address the most in Green Bay. And finally, Minnesota, again, it's the split. Do you have a quarterback? Nobody knows yet. March is going to tell us. If you keep Kirk Cousins, great. Then you need to address your secondary because you have the skill position players. Your offensive line is functional. Madison is a decent running back. But your secondary and possibly even to your linebacking core is not there quite yet outside of Harrison Smith, who's seemingly ageless. But Minnesota needs to address those two positions in the split. AFC South, the worst division in football, possibly. It's bad. Atlanta quarterback Desmond Ridder sucks. He can't be your quarterback of the future. Taylor Heineke can't do it either. You need a quarterback until you get one. Bye bye Atlanta from the NFL. Carolina. Skeptics would say maybe quarterback. You don't need a quarterback. You couldn't get one even if you wanted to. You need to get offensive line help. For those who don't know, I am a big Bryce Young believer, but Bryce Young can't learn, develop, or be good at all unless somebody can block for him. Just like, I don't know what I said for Aaron Rodgers or Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert. And before anyone says it, I'm not saying Bryce Young is on their level, but it's the same thing. If you can't block for your quarterback, you can't have him play well consistently. It does not work. Carolina, look at me. Offensive line. Fix it. You also need all the skill position players as well, but you need offensive line first. New Orleans, I think you need another wide receiver, actually. Olave's great, but it's constantly slant boys always hurt. This is my colloquial name for Michael Thomas. Go watch his record-breaking, oh my god, greatest wide receiver season of all time. Completely overrated player because it's all slants and all 3-yard out routes. But nonetheless, you need skill position players on that team because I don't think you can truly address your quarterback needs with the financial cap space you have. And in Tampa Bay, I think it comes down to this. They have a great interior presence with Vita Vea, but do they have the edge players to really be effective? And second, do you have effective linebacker play? Levante David's always on the cusp of injury retirement, but he's still a really effective player. And Devin White was incredibly some hits, but a lot of misses throughout the year as well. So do you have those two do you have those two layers to your defense ready to go? If you don't, not going to matter. NFC East. This was a tough one for me with Dallas because I didn't want to be poisoned. Not poisoned, but I didn't want my impression of the wild card game, which was also glorious to watch. I didn't want their wild card game to poison me into thinking that was the only thing. Like, that told you everything about Dallas. This is the only one I think you need a running back, but I also think you need an interior presence on the defensive line or a true linebacker because Parsons is really an edge rusher when you think about it. You need to solve that. I think they need a running back, but if I were going to focus on one, I'm going to say it has to be a true blue linebacker because Parsons is asked to do so much that your defense cannot handle that all the time. You need to have more effective players around him to allow him to go be the stud that he is where he is needed at the most, which is as a pass rusher and as a run player as well. He's a great run support player. You need to fix that, so I think that's linebacking core or defensive tackle. New York Giants. Here's another split. You need kind of everything on your offense. You need a quarterback. Do you have one? I am not sure because who knows if Daniel Jones is going to play again. But you're kind of in cap hell, so I don't know if you're going to be able to address your quarterback position. So then you go, they need an offensive line, but they also need skill players because both are not good. They have one stud on each of those groups. They have Andrew Thomas and a line. They have nothing else. Wide receiver, you could count a tight end. I think if healthy, Darren Waller can still be a good player, and Saquon helps a lot with screen game and stuff like that. So they kind of equal out one stud there. But who knows if Saquon's going to be in New York either. So you got to figure that out. Philly. the entire back half of your defense, but let's say secondary to focus. Your secondary utterly sucked at the end of the season when you just turn the lights off and quit. And yes, I said the Philadelphia Eagles quit because they did. As someone who lives in Philadelphia and doesn't root for the Eagles, not gonna lie, kind of enjoyed it. And it was really nice seeing all my coworkers be wrong because I think their football takes are awful. But nonetheless, you have no corner position play. James Bradbury was a complete liability. Your safety play had no support whatsoever and was not good. Your linebacker play was not good either. You were depending way too much on the Kobe Dean, which didn't come through. Your defensive line was not as good as you thought it was because you thought you were just going to be historic again, and that's very hard. Historically, it's hard to say historically about a historic defense. It's hard to consistently be that high of a sack producing defensive line. It just does not happen in NFL history. You were banking on that way too much in Philadelphia. You needed second and third level players to support that and make them more effective, and you did not have that. So, and there's more offensive issues as well, but you need a linebacker. You need to address linebacker and secondary. In Washington, I think it comes down to quarterback again. It sucks to always say that because I don't think Sam Howell played bad or super poorly, but I don't think he did enough to say like, oh, we got to stick with Sam Howell for years and check it out. Um, and they're kind of a team who's kind of got a bit of everything, but they don't have a lot of it. They don't really have anything, but they have a bit of everything. They're in a weird spot right now with the ownership change, and we don't know how that team's really going to function. We won't for the next 2 or 3 years until we really get a grasp on this new front office and coaching staff. Um, but I'll say quarterback for now because it's clear you're going to need to address that position. And the AFC West to round it out. Arizona, you need skill position players, specifically wide receivers, to catch the ball from Kyler Murray. If I were Arizona, I would do anything in my power, including making a deal with the devil. I do not care what else you have to do. You need to get Marvin Harrison Jr. on this team because someone needs to catch a pass besides McBride for the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray showed he could make a great step as a passer this year. Your offensive line started to work. You need pass catchers to help Kyler Murray out in Arizona. LA Rams, this is another tough one. They kind of had some spots for me. I think it's still going to be, for me, offensive line. I also wrote down secondary because I don't really have a difference maker there anymore. So I might go secondary still, but offensive line needs to be addressed because Matt Stafford still does take too much hits and too much punishment. But they're sneaky good. When you think they're not by their roster, they're actually sneaky good in some places. But they have a few holes that make you think that you need those. The Super Bowl runner-up, San Francisco. They clearly have a great team. Pass catcher, not a problem. Secondary, you could say they might need somebody, but Charvarius Ward's great. Jimmy Ward's a good player. And their defensive line is obviously stacked. Their linebackers are great. I went interior offensive line. Brock Purdy has a bit, just like every other quarterback, specifically, though, just kind of like Tom Brady in this, interior pressure can really screw up Brock Purdy. He's a rhythm player, in my opinion, and he's a great distributor. You have to force him off those. To succeed against Brock Purdy, you need to imply interior pressure to force him to get off those quick reads that make him successful. Because if you do not disrupt him, that is where he can dice you up a bit. I think they need to address their interior offensive line. They think they're fine at tackle as long as Trent Williams is there, and they have their number 2 at the right tackle position. You need an interior offensive line to help. And Seattle, again, it's a tough one. They have a bit of everything, but they don't have one of really anything except wide receiver, which is so weird in a Seattle team for the last decade plus. I went with linebacker and defensive line. They just cannot apply enough pressure. They keep getting their secondaries filled with great players, especially Devin Witherspoon now. But linebacker, defensive line, it's just not there yet. And they need to start learning how to apply more pressure. I went with both layers because both can do that for you in some capacity, but it's just not there yet for Seattle. So those are my standout players for that. But that is your quick preview. We did it pretty quickly, 20 minutes, the entire NFL in 20 minutes. So that is a quick preview into the NFL coming in 2024, what teams need to address. But that is going to do it for the show today. And I appreciate all of you for watching. I hope you enjoyed your Super Bowls and enjoyed everything else. As always, keep checking in on PTE Creative. Got more Pokemon card pack openings. Every Tuesday, we got the new ONETA show coming. I hope you guys really enjoyed the first episode with Smashdown roster cuts. Actually, the first kind of episode or two, but it's a two-parter for episode 1. Hope you really enjoyed that one. New Pokemon are coming your way every Wednesday now through the Halzaria videos of Pokemon Bliss and Oblivion. Every Thursday, you know you're going to get football from me here. And I love giving you that content. It always brings joy to my heart. And Fridays, the rotation's always going to keep coming. And please check us out on Etsy. Just like I said, use that promo code BLISS. Any order, 2 items or more is 20% off at ptcreative.etsy.com. Thank you for everything you guys do for me just by even clicking on this content. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Can't wait for the next one. Peace, love, and hugs to all of you. Like, comment, subscribe for more. Deuces, everybody.